It was a stormy Friday night when my friends and I decided to have a sleepover at my grandparents' house. They were away for the weekend, and the old Victorian mansion always seemed to hold an air of mystery. We thought it would be a fun and spooky adventure, but little did we know that this sleepover would turn into a terrifying nightmare. As the thunder roared outside, we gathered in the dimly lit living room. Sarah, the most adventurous among us, suggested we play a game she had discovered online called the Cursed Game. It involved a spirit board, but instead of trying to communicate with friendly spirits, we would be seeking out a malevolent entity rumored to possess great power. The mood shifted from excitement to unease, but curiosity got the better of us. We found an old Ouija board in the attic, dusted it off, and arranged ourselves around it. The air seemed charged with anticipation as Sarah explained the rules. "We have to be very careful," she warned. "We must close the session properly, or the entity could be unleashed into our world." Trepidation filled the room, but we reluctantly agreed to proceed. Sarah lit a few candles, their flickering flames casting eerie shadows on the walls. She placed her fingers on the planchette and we followed suit. "Is there anyone here?" she asked hesitantly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planchette trembled, moving slowly towards yes. Goosebumps prickled on my skin as the entity made its presence known. "What is your name?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. The planchette moved methodically, spelling out Samuel. The atmosphere grew more tense as we asked questions, learning that Samuel was a malevolent spirit who had once lived in the mansion. He claimed to be wronged in life and sought revenge on those who dared to invoke him. Fear consumed us, and we decided to end the session. We followed Sarah's instructions to close the connection, but as the planchette settled on goodbye, the candles flickered violently, and a cold breeze filled the room. We exchanged uneasy glances, and a sudden thud echoed through the house. It seemed to come from upstairs. My heart pounded in my chest as we ascended the creaking staircase, one step at a time. As we reached the top, we saw that the door to my grandparents' room was slightly ajar. It had been locked earlier, and none of us had gone inside. Nervously, we pushed it open, and a chill shot down my spine. The room was in disarray, as if a whirlwind had torn through it. But what chilled us to the bone were the sinister messages scrawled on the walls in an inky black substance. They spoke of death and revenge, and they were signed with a hauntingly familiar S. Terror took hold of us, and we rushed back downstairs. The storm outside had intensified, the wind howling like an angry beast. We decided to stay together in the living room, hoping to find safety in numbers. But as the night wore on, a sense of foreboding filled the air. The candles flickered erratically, and strange shadows danced on the walls. Unseen footsteps seemed to echo through the halls, and we heard whispers, barely audible but filled with malice. Sarah suggested we call the police, but to our horror, our phones had no signal. Panic set in, and the realization that we were cut off from the outside world only deepened our fear. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The candles extinguished, and we were left in pitch-black darkness. Heart pounding, I reached for my flashlight, only to find it missing. "We need to find a way out," I whispered urgently, my voice barely audible above the storm. As we felt our way through the dark, an unnatural coldness enveloped us. The darkness seemed to have a presence of its own, suffocating and malevolent. Desperation set in, and we stumbled through the house seeking an escape. But the mansion seemed to have transformed, its corridors stretching endlessly, leading us in circles. Our fear intensified as we realized we were trapped in a nightmarish maze. Then I heard a voice, a soft, eerie whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You invoked me. Now face the consequences." It was Samuel, the malevolent spirit we had awakened. He had somehow crossed over into our world, and he was determined to exact his revenge. We huddled together, trying to fend off the haunting presence, but it was futile. Samuel's anger surrounded us like an impenetrable fog, and his whispers grew louder and more menacing. "Leave this place," he hissed, "or suffer the consequences." But we couldn't find the way out. The mansion seemed to have become an inescapable prison, and we were at the mercy of the malevolent spirit. As we clung to each other in terror, the walls seemed to close in around us, suffocating and closing off our escape routes. It was as if the mansion itself had become an extension of Samuel's vengeful wrath. Time lost all meaning, and we were trapped in an endless nightmare. The storm outside raged on, echoing the turmoil within the mansion's walls. Each step we took seemed to lead us deeper into the darkness, and hope dwindled with every passing moment. As dawn approached, the mansion's oppressive atmosphere began to recede. The shadows retreated, and the whispers ceased. Samuel's presence seemed to fade, but our terror remained. Exhausted and traumatized, we finally stumbled upon the front door. As we stepped outside, the storm had subsided, and the first light of morning greeted us. The mansion stood before us, still and silent, as if nothing had happened. But we knew better. The malevolent spirit of Samuel had been unleashed, and his wrath had forever changed us. We vowed never to speak of that night again, knowing that the horrors we had encountered would forever be etched in our minds. The cursed game had turned our sleepover into a night of terror, and we had faced an entity beyond our understanding. As we parted ways, the memories of the haunted mansion haunted us. The malevolent spirit had left its mark, and we were forever changed by the night that had gone so terribly wrong. The old Victorian mansion, once a place of mystery and allure, had become a chilling reminder that some doors should never be opened, and some games should never be played. The sleepover at Emily's house was meant to be a night of laughter and fun. We were celebrating her birthday, and she had convinced her parents to let us stay up late and enjoy ourselves. Little did we know that this innocent gathering would take a dark turn and become a haunting experience none of us would ever forget. As the night deepened, we gathered in Emily's bedroom, the walls adorned with posters of our favorite bands and movies. The atmosphere was lively, and we were exchanging ghost stories to add some excitement to the evening. Sarah, always eager to spook us, suggested we play a game she had read about online called The Mirror's Malevolence. It involved staring into a mirror in a dark room and saying the name of the person you hated the most. If the ritual was successful, the spirit of your hatred would come back to torment you. Nervous laughter filled the room as Sarah pulled out a small, ornate mirror she had borrowed from her grandmother. The silver frame was adorned with intricate patterns, adding an eerie touch to the game. "Are you sure we should do this?" I asked, feeling uneasy about the whole idea. "It's just a silly game," Emily reassured us, though her voice trembled slightly. Sarah lit a few candles and dimmed the lights to set the mood. We gathered around the mirror, and Sarah explained the rules once more. With hesitant curiosity, we each took turns saying the name of the person we despised the most. The air grew heavy as we called out names, half expecting something to happen. But after the last name was uttered, the room remained still, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. We laughed it off, relieved that nothing had happened, and decided to move on to more conventional sleepover activities. As the night wore on, we started to settle down, getting ready to sleep. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air seemed colder, and the mirror's reflection seemed to hold an unsettling glimmer. I tried to push the thought away, but a strange curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't help but go back to the mirror, staring at my own reflection. As I gazed into the depths of the glass, my reflection shifted, as if it were mocking me. Heart racing, I looked away, dismissing it as a trick of the light. But when I looked back, my reflection was distorted, its eyes cold and malevolent. Fear gripped me, and I stumbled backward, unable to tear my gaze away from the haunting image. "Guys, there's something wrong with the mirror," I called out, my voice trembling. My friends rushed to my side, and when they saw my reflection, they gasped in horror. The image in the mirror was no longer my own. It was a twisted version of me, filled with hatred and malevolence. "Say your name backward," Sarah yelled, remembering something she had read about breaking cursed reflections. Without hesitation, I repeated my name backward, praying it would dispel the malevolent reflection. As the words left my lips, the reflection in the mirror contorted as if in pain. The room felt oppressive, and the candles flickered erratically. Suddenly, a voice, cold and inhuman, echoed through the room. "You can't escape my grasp," it whispered. Panic set in, and we rushed to leave the room, but the door slammed shut with a force that felt supernatural. Fear consumed us as we pounded on the door, desperate to escape the malevolent presence that had invaded our sleepover. As we turned back to the mirror, our reflections were no longer our own. They were distorted, twisted versions of ourselves, their eyes filled with hatred. "This is just a nightmare!" Emily cried, her voice shaking. But the nightmarish reality continued to unfold. The mirror's malevolence had become tangible, and there was no escaping its grasp. We tried everything to break the curse, repeating our names backward, throwing objects at the mirror, and even pleading for it to release us. But it was futile. The malevolent spirit seemed to feed on our fear, growing stronger with every passing moment. Hours turned into eternity as we were trapped in the haunted room, tormented by the malevolent reflections and the ominous voice that taunted us. In a last-ditch effort, I looked back into the mirror, my heart pounding with fear. I locked eyes with my reflection, determined not to show any weakness. "You have no power over us," I declared, trying to sound brave. For a moment, there was a flicker of uncertainty in the reflection's eyes. It seemed to waver, as if contemplating its next move. The candles flickered violently, and a gust of wind rushed through the room. Then, with a blood-curdling scream, the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. The room fell silent, and the malevolent presence seemed to vanish. We were finally free. Gasping for breath, we stumbled out of the room, our hearts still racing. The rest of the house felt safe, as if untouched by the malevolence that had haunted the mirror. We vowed never to speak of that night again, but the memory of the haunted sleepover would forever be etched in our minds. The malevolent mirror had taught us a chilling lesson, that some games should never be played, and some reflections can reveal the darkness that lurks within. The invitation to Ravenwood Manor came on a crisp October evening, the perfect setting for an eerie sleepover. The mansion had a sinister reputation, but my curiosity outweighed my fear. Emily, our host, assured us that it would be a night of unforgettable thrills. As we arrived at the imposing gates, the moon cast an eerie glow on the ancient stone walls. A chill ran down my spine, but excitement overwhelmed my unease. We entered the grand hall, greeted by a musty scent that clung to the air. Portraits of long-deceased ancestors stared down at us, their eyes seeming to follow our every move. After dinner, we gathered in the dimly lit sitting room, its walls adorned with dusty antiques and dark tapestries. Emily had planned a series of spooky games, starting with a classic Ouija board. My heart raced as we placed our hands on the planchette, half expecting it to move on its own. "Is there anyone here?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the planchette slowly began to glide across the board, spelling out YES. We gasped, but curiosity got the better of us and we continued the session. The spirit claimed to be a long-lost relative of Emily's family, who had died under mysterious circumstances. As we asked more questions, the air grew colder, and an unsettling presence seemed to fill the room. Despite our fears, we were drawn deeper into the world of the unknown. As the night deepened, Emily proposed a more daring game, a seance to summon the spirits of the manor. I hesitated, feeling a sense of unease, but my friends were eager to continue the spooky adventure. The room was dark except for the flickering candles on the table. We formed a circle, placing our hands on an old weathered planchette. Emily led the seance, calling out to any spirits present. Suddenly, the candles flickered wildly, and a cold gust seemed to sweep through the room. Emily's voice quivered as she continued, seeking contact with the other side. Then a voice, an eerie whisper, echoed through the room. "Help me!" The hairs on my neck stood on end and goosebumps covered my skin. My heart pounded and a feeling of dread washed over me. "Who are you?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. "Lost, trapped, help!" the voice pleaded. We were all scared, but Emily was determined to help the spirit. She asked if there was anything we could do, and the response sent chills down our spines. "Unlock the secret. Find the truth." Before we could ask more questions, the candles extinguished, and darkness enveloped us. Panic set in, and we scrambled to turn on the lights. As the room brightened, we noticed the atmosphere had shifted. An air of sadness lingered, as if the spirit's presence still clung to the room. We knew we had disturbed something beyond our understanding. Deciding to heed the spirit's words, we embarked on a quest to uncover the truth behind the haunting of Ravenwood Manor. Emily, driven by a newfound sense of responsibility, led us to the dusty library. We searched through old journals and records, piecing together the history of the manor and the tragic events that had unfolded within its walls. It became evident that the spirit we had encountered was a young woman named Isabella, who had been wronged and falsely accused of a crime she didn't commit. Her cries for help had been unanswered for centuries, and she had been trapped in the manor, unable to find peace. As we delved deeper into the mystery, strange occurrences became more frequent. Objects moved on their own, eerie whispers filled the corridors, and we caught glimpses of shadowy figures that vanished in an instant. It seemed the spirits of Ravenwood Manor were not pleased with our meddling. As Halloween approached, the haunting intensified. The grand hallways echoed with mournful cries, and the portraits seemed to come alive, their eyes filled with sorrow and despair. Emily grew obsessed with uncovering the truth, but her determination was pushing us closer to danger. Late one night, Emily disappeared. Panicked, we searched the manor, our footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. Finally, we found her in the library, staring intently at an old journal. "I found it," she whispered, her eyes wide with realization. The truth. Isabella's truth. As we read the journal, the shocking details unfolded. Isabella had been framed by a jealous rival and locked away in a hidden chamber. The truth had been buried to protect the reputation of the powerful family that resided in Ravenwood Manor. Emily was determined to free Isabella's spirit and clear her name, but the malevolent spirits were not willing to let go. As we approached the hidden chamber, the air grew heavy, and an evil presence seemed to seep from the walls. With trembling hands, Emily unlocked the door, revealing a small, forgotten room. Inside, we found Isabella's remains, a tragic testament to the injustice she had suffered. Suddenly, the room became suffused with an eerie light, and Isabella's spirit appeared before us. Her eyes were filled with gratitude, and for a moment it seemed as if the haunting might end. But the malevolent spirits of Ravenwood Manor had other plans. As Isabella's spirit began to ascend, they manifested with a malevolent force. The atmosphere turned sinister, and the manor seemed to shake with their fury. "You dare to free her?" a chilling voice echoed. We were paralyzed with fear as the malevolent spirits closed in on us. They were not willing to relinquish their hold on the manor, and we were caught in the crossfire. Desperation set in, and we fought back against the malevolent entities with the newfound knowledge of Isabella's truth. The room seemed to ignite with a supernatural energy as we confronted the malevolent spirits head-on. With a final burst of determination, Emily called out to Isabella, urging her to find peace and move on. The room trembled and the malevolent entities seemed to waver. In a blinding flash of light, Isabella's spirit and the malevolent spirits clashed. The force was intense, and for a moment it felt like the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The room fell silent, and the malevolent spirits vanished into the darkness. Isabella's spirit looked at us with a soft smile, her eyes filled with gratitude and peace. The haunting of Ravenwood Manor had ended. As we left the manor the next morning, we knew we would never forget the terrifying sleepover that had gone so terribly wrong. We had uncovered the truth, freed a tormented spirit, and faced malevolent entities beyond our comprehension. Ravenwood Manor would forever hold its haunting secrets, but we had learned that some mysteries were meant to be left in the shadows. The experience had changed us, a chilling reminder that the world of the supernatural was filled with both darkness and light, and meddling with the spirits of the past came with consequences we could never have imagined.